display a bit of a background, and I hope that's okay. It'll just take a few seconds because some of you don't know me, some of you do. My name is Barry Dutton. I was born and raised in Oshawa. I've been a licensed realtor there since '91. As one of the realtors not consulted on the impact of this project on our community and property values and health concerns, as per the expert panel that is lined up in dealing with this incinerator. As stated at committee last week when I was there, I would have volunteered my 20 years of real estate knowledge and services free to help out my community. I recently ran in the 2010 election for Oshawa City Council for a local seat. I ran as a resident and an ever-growing frustrated resident, not as a politician. And I ran as a taxpayer and stakeholder. I'm seeing things going on politically that concern me greatly. That's the only reason I'm involved now. I felt this was imperative just to clarify my heart and desires here for you first, to lay a foundation since I'm new to many of you, but I'm not new, so to speak. I am concerned about the future of our kids in our communities. We have a high school youth here with us today, which is interesting, Jacob, and I do also sit on the Oshawa Committee of Adjustment until 2014. I was at the Council on Public Education Day on this issue recently, and I was there for 6 hours starting at 9:30. I did have to leave at 3:30. So again, like I said at committee, if there's anything I address here today which was addressed after I left that day, please forgive me. I will refer to this large document that we all got that day several times throughout my presentation. Some summary of my points. The wind and the water blows in all directions, and of course this will affect the water table. To think otherwise, to me, it just seems just silly. The heavy metals and other particulate will settle out for miles around, one day at a time, in all the lands in the water. It will affect many over time. It's what I spoke about on the long-term cause and effect on health, like the previous delegate, and the healthcare system. This incinerator also sits right beside our Lake Ontario, pretty much. One of my concerns is how it will affect the Second Marsh, just a few miles away downstream in Oshawa. The Second Marsh is a wildlife preserve and local natural wonder, and are the lungs of the water. Home to many species of animals and wildlife, not to mention the kids that come there all year round for education on such things. This will erode and plausibly kill the Second Marsh slowly over a long period of time. At the F&A committee meeting last week, I asked staff and councilors present if they had any stats or numbers on 2 of the Canadian EFW sites at Burnaby and Gold River sites. Some dialogue went on at that time. I had my email address passed out. I haven't received any emails, and I know there's nothing in my spam, and I didn't get any calls. Also that day, I asked if any councilors or staff had made trips outside of Mr. Pidwabecki to any EFW sites. I still don't know too much about that, but I would be interested to know if any site visits have been made, and if anybody could provide me what their findings to myself or at large. We know that the Ministry of Environment was replaced not long ago at the end of 2010. My concern is, are they fully aware and up to speed on the issues here? We also know that the ministry track record stopping or putting a hold on projects for review is almost 0%. I learned this through watching the 407 issue polarize my city of Oshawa and the surrounding communities. In my opinion, we can slow down this process to at least investigate more. But once the shovel is in the ground, it's too late at that point. We have to consider the lungs and the health at the cellular level of those living, those yet to be born, and again, places in the health of the Second Marsh and the water table there in Lake Ontario. That said, as I understand it, there seems to be a hold or fixed price on the contract of the HCA agreement until December 2011, unless I'm mistaken. So why is this being kind of pushed through so quickly, every department? If it's a great idea, then why isn't York Region, our partner with us in this project, not eager or willing or able to take this on in their region? Again, as the previous delegate mentioned, the soccer fields next door, just east of the incinerator site at Osborne Road, are a great physical example, literally, of the irony and the damage caused to the future generations just waiting to happen. Picture the youths and little kids, even if they were your grandchildren or kids, running around that field, playing soccer, living life, while this incinerator spews out toxins into the already high, bad air quality numbers that Clarington has demonstrated, and will only lend to the problems. And the air quality does affect, as we say, the neighboring communities. I do have some questions here regarding the ongoing and non-fixed costs of the incinerator moving forward. What are the fixed costs going to be, and will they escalate? What are the non-fixed or escalating costs going to be? Not limited to by including fuel, labor, wages, etc. What are the percentage of costs being covered by the region? What are the percentage of costs being covered by Covanta? What are these quantifiable costs, amounts, and percentages? And can you provide to us, the residents, somehow a chart or a graph, etc., of these things costed out over a long period of time? As I referred to in my F&A committee delegation at Region the other day, this document, there's a few things to refer to here. This is what I do know. On page 41, we notice that most or all of the Covanta sites are either on or near bodies of water. My question is, why is that? Page 71 tells us how ICI waste will be sorted and screened effectively. In my opinion, it's doubtful that it can be. It's too toxic and too cluttered to do effectively. On page 75, all the nice pictures and renderings of the buildings that are in our booklet here conveniently only show the words energy facility, etc. on the building. The words from waste that we hear all the time are missing from all of the diagrams and the pictures. To me, it kind of looks like a way of leaving out offensive wording and tying a pretty ribbon on it to make it look nice and to raise less questions when you see it on the building. The residents visiting and sending their youth there for school trips and whatnot surely would ask some extra questions if the wording was intact as we refer to it daily with this project. On page 21, the experts have spoken, and it is in this document. All say that there will be no impacts to property value. As spoken, I have been a realtor for 20 years, and I can tell you it will impact property values with the amount of people that I've spoken to that own homes regarding this. So that is a false statement in my opinion. And based on my research in the field, talking to the various stakeholders who will be paying for this project and most directly affected by it, they don't want it. Taxes will probably rise, along with both water and sewer rates. Generally, that's a guarantee. And property values may fall, which is an unfair equation. Thus, you get hit at both ends. At roughly 10:25 a.m. on the public session recently on this issue, Adam Chamberlain, the environmental lawyer on that panel that day, stood at the microphone and relayed that statement that there will be no impacts on property values. It's funny because I've spoken to a lot of residents and realtors on this issue in a non-biased manner. And save and except for one realtor, they all tend to think differently. The one realtor made a statement in front of a regional council that's here today, and we both looked at each other, and I said, "This is one of the dumbest statements you've ever made." The councilor agreed. That was in December that just recently passed. We all understand the word stigma. If a community is stuck with real problems or perceived ones, hence the word stigma is used here, it will impair the ability of the community to function. It will affect value and morale. This is a fact. Further on page 21, stating basically this will not compete with diversion. In my opinion, it will 100% compete. All the years of roughly 2% growth in the recycling educations and efforts will be flushed when people start saying, just chuck it all in the garbage, it's all going to be burned anyway. People want to take the easy route most times. We're all so busy and tired and raising kids and making a living and all that good stuff. On page 37, it states the public has had more than enough time and opportunity to deal with this and were informed. I would say no, they were not, in my opinion. This project has been on the region's books for years, and many people, most actually that I talked to, are either unaware of the project altogether or at least unaware of the huge health concerns and the huge price tag, both financially and socially health-wise. The rest of my points for this are still in writing here. You can refer to that a little later. My first political dealing was this incinerator. I also heard and thought the same thing as Mayor Foster with regards to water vapor being the only thing coming out. And he signed that card, he said there about a week ago, based on that's what he thought. Now my question is if now a standing mayor can come out and be as transparent about this and how he feels about it now. Can we not see that the public probably feels the same way also, either due to misinformation or lack of information for whatever reason? This is a fair statement, and I personally appreciated that on a statement by Mr. Foster, and I'd like to acknowledge him on that. My question, why is there only a 3-year contract to deal with or test the ambient soil monitoring? The first 3 years are going to be the best for that soil. Compare it 10 or 20 years from now. Further, I do not see any pro-incineration groups going anywhere that I speak or go to council or committee level. My last main point, I'll skip through the rest of it. It's in writing and my email address is at the end if you would like to talk to me. What are the costs and the burden going to be in the long-term healthcare system? The cost of fine particulate and heavy metal cleanup, the cost to our lungs and the youth and the children long-term, the generational effects I addressed at committee last week are plausibly going to include strange issues for health going forwards in the next several years and decades. I do want to bring to your attention just a few things, and I'll close.
You have to wrap up, Mr. Judge.
Thank you, sir. Walkerton. the Love Canal in New York, and the movie many of us have watched with Julia Robertson and Aaron Brockovich, based on the unemployed single mother who becomes a legal assistant and almost single-handedly brings down a California power company accused of polluting the city's water supply.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions to Mr. Dutton? Councilor Neal?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Dutton. In regards to property values, are you saying property values would just fall in municipality of Clarington, or would you say that property values in what sphere, how many kilometers, or like in your mind? I'm asking you because you got 20 years in the industry, so real estate industry.
Thank you. I would say, in my opinion, based on what the further away from the incinerator you go, the higher your property values are going to be. So, but if you're in a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, the closer you are to this thing, the harder you are plausibly going to be hit.
Any other questions? Mr. Collier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Dutton. Just wondering if you have any facts to back up the answer you just gave. Have you done any studies around any other incinerators in North America and their property values before and after they've been constructed?
I would answer that with directing you back to the question I'd asked earlier. If I could get some input from some of the people, our staff who are well trained, and some of the counselors that may have done the site visits.
Any research?
The short answer to that is no.
Okay.
The slightly longer answer is I do field research with clients. That's what I get paid to do. There's a scope of what I can accomplish.
You've answered my question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Dutton. I hear a little bit of again, things like that. Would you typify the lakefront, Cove Road, East Beach in Clarington as being some of the more expensive real estate?
In my experience, anything that's waterfront is generally considered to be prime real estate. Oddly enough, the exception over the years is generally Oshawa. When you go to a waterfront...
We've got to move the meeting forward, so
Okay.
I want to keep with that. And right beside some of the most expensive real estate in Clarington is the St. Mary's plant. Is that correct?
One could say that.
Well, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Dutton. Do residential sales, do you?
Primarily, I have done some ICI real estate for Bell Mobility and corporations in the past.
What type of disclosure do you tell your clients in Clarington when you're listing or selling a house?
These days,
Yeah.
there's probably, it's less of a written disclosure, I would say, at this point, because, like I said, our job as a realtor is to assess a large scope of the project of that house, which the demographic of any community involves a lot of things. You verbally tell them that there's an incinerator going in if they do not know. You let them know where the process is at. And I mean, there are political pressures in any community that will affect property values, that's a fact.
What do you tell your buyer who wants to buy a house in Clarington within 3 miles or sell it within 3 miles, you're using 3 miles of the incinerator? What do you tell them? You tell them that, Mr. Buyer, your house properties are going to go down the toilet because of this, or what do you tell them?
See, your wording is a little stronger than mine. I would say that, yeah, well, what I've said is it's plausible the property values are going to go down based on the closer you are to this incinerator. I would think the more direct your property values are going to be affected. How I would handle that, if I'm in the car with them or I'm walking around showing property, there is an incinerator that is proposed to go in. We're in the final stages. I mean, I can only speak because we're in April of 2011 here, but there's a proposed incinerator going in. The shovel's not in the ground yet. Do you think that that's going to affect your property value in the future?
Or you just say it's going to affect them?
In my opinion, I think it will.
You tell your clients that.
In my opinion, yes, I do.
What do you think of the value, the property values with nuclear plant. That could affect property value. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, see, I skipped past some of the things that you can read later, but our communities already sit in the middle of 2 nuclear sites. By and large, nuclear technology is pretty safe. I know that the Darlington new build is something that's on everybody's mind. There's jobs that could be created with the new build for Darlington, same as with this site. I understand that, but at what cost?
Well, you're talking about by and large nuclear plants being safe, and I agree with you, in Ontario. By and large, we do not agree that energy from waste facilities in Europe are safe when we have energy from waste facilities in the middle of residential areas. We do not agree that would give you a strong belief that they're safe.
Let me answer that 2 ways. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I hadn't received any correspondence back with regards to any staff or council on their position with visiting these sites would be 1. And 2, I believe this technology that we're dealing with Covanta, everything I've seen seems to be older technology and not as safe.
Well, I'm glad to see that you're here educating yourself. This has been going on for quite a few years, and a lot of these questions and discussions have been asked. So I'm glad you're here educating. Would you agree that, did you read today's Toronto Star?
I did not.
About property values?
I did not.
About property values in Pickering, we have a nuclear plant. And we also have probably one of the largest waste treatment plants around, with an incinerator there. And would you agree that property values in Pickering have continuously rose in the last several years? Is one of the highest selling valued areas in Ontario.
They would, because last year I was showing $500,000 properties through Scarborough and Toronto. They ended up settling in Pickering. And I would say by and large, the closer you are to the GTA is a direct result of why property values are increasing anywhere east of the GTA.
So it's close to Toronto, it's close to a nuclear plant, it's close to a facility that incinerates. So therefore, the property values in Clarington should not be affected if it's not being affected in Pickering in a negative fashion.
If I can draw your attention back to the word stigma that I used earlier, that could cause,
Stigma is driven by people that don't have the exact facts and knowledge about what has happened. Would you not agree with that?
I would, but I would also direct you back to the fact that many people in the public either are misdirected with information on this project or don't know it altogether.
Well, I would agree with you. It's something that's been around for 4 or 5 years. Not only 4 or 5 years, but this is something that's been discussed for the last 15, 20 years as to what we're going to be doing with our garbage since we banned facilities in Durham region to bury stuff. So this has not been going on for the last year.
Thank you very much.
Actually, can I just 15-second follow-up for you?
There was no question there. Mr. Dutton, don't give him another opportunity to ask you a question.
I don't mind.
Any other questions? Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll just ask some short, quick questions. Thank you. As a realtor, you have clients looking to, let's say, buy houses. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And do they ask you for things like, you have houses near schools?
They do.
And would they ask you, do you have any properties available near a shopping mall or districts like that?
Yeah, and similar infrastructure, yeah.
Has anyone ever asked you, oh, do you have a place real close to an incinerator?
It's not one of the burning requests on the wish list.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Being none, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.